There is no pain so great as the memory of joy in present grief. Posited by ancient Greek author Aeschylus, it rings as true today as it did several centuries ago. We as people view grief through a myopic lens, and deservedly so. After all, it is our grief, no one else's. Grief, while certainly unpleasant, is one of the more personal things we do in our life. We strain our eyes and view it as a process, a series of steps back to the aforementioned joy. And that's not far off. In 1969, Swiss psychiatrist Elisabeth Kübler-Ross published her book On Death and Dying, which was the world's first introduction to the 5 stages of grief, which include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. And while that's been expanded on in several very interesting ways, for the purpose of this video, let's focus on those 5, and in particular the last one, acceptance. The doorway back into that memory of joy. Oftentimes, this can be the hardest stage to traverse, with expectations of linear progress blurring any sense of personal achievement. Furthermore, the emotional distress you feel throughout can leave you disoriented and simply yearning for any way out. And that can be dangerous. There is no pain so great as the memory of joy in present grief. So what is it that makes the process of acceptance so difficult? Oftentimes it's circumstance. We're wrapped up in the tragedy that caused the grief and there's no realistic way to not be involved. Other times, we just don't want to, choosing instead to regress and work backwards through the stages of grief. Today I want to examine the non-linear process of grief through the lens of the 2011 Lars Von Trier drama Melancholia. The movie follows Justine, who is born with a deep and inherent sadness. These things echo throughout her personal and professional relationships today, as we see her fractured marriage and work life rear their ugly and endlessly needy heads throughout. The limo scene provides brilliant commentary on this feeling. Navigating our interpersonal relationships throughout life can be difficult, like a winding, unstable road. The journey can be made even more difficult when we feel like the flaws built into us make us ill-equipped to navigate said path. Much like the limo is ill-equipped to travel this one. The assumption can be drawn that this implies that you should become a lesser version of yourself, a shorter limo. But I'd argue you'd be better off as an entirely different vehicle. Justine has agreed to a marriage she no longer feels welcome in, but she goes along with it despite her husband's clear indifference towards her and her own embedded sadness practically bursting at the seams at every opportunity. And why? Because there's a normalcy in it, and while maybe not satisfactory, it's at least comforting. And comfort is a rare feeling in this world. The first 46 minutes of this movie, while sometimes tiring to sit through, are masterfully done. The way Justine falls apart at the slightest inconvenience, the constant shuffling through tone, the lingering of it all, these disorient the viewer and mimic the haze in which you live in when you have this deep, innate sadness. The world has never bent to you, but rather you to it. Time after time until you're broken. In the worst of times, nothing makes sense, and stuff that does probably shouldn't. And while we've examined in part the similarities between depression and grief, it's important to note they're not synonyms. While depression is not necessary for someone who grieves, everyone, regardless of their relationship with depression, will grieve at some point. It's one of life's unfortunate certainties. Up to this point in the movie, there's been little outside of depression to examine. But then, there's a shift. The wedding planner reveals the amount of beans that were in the jar guests were tasked with guessing in order to win a prize. Only by the time he's announced it, he does so to a room that's long been empty at a wedding that's long been cancelled. It's a portrayal of the futility of joy, or even the futility of the pursuit of joy. Throughout the rest of the movie, there's a lingering sense of dread, as if everything's in its place, but never how it should be. You see it in the character's seemingly strange actions throughout the remaining scenes, as if an otherworldly force has been pulling on them. And soon, there is. It's revealed that a rogue planet named Melancholia has entered the solar system from a point behind the sun. It's expected to pass by the Earth in a stunning cosmic show, but others are less optimistic. Others are fearful that Melancholia will crash into the Earth, bringing an end to humanity. While we contemplate the ephemerality of existence, forces beyond our control can lead us places we never intended to go. Justine's sister Claire desperately seeks out some reassurance other than her husband's half-hearted attempts, and finds herself in a space that instead only confirms her fears. Rather than finding the comfort she was seeking, she only found more fear, a testament to a truly complex world we live in. And the irony is, she and the others were right. After its flyby, Melancholia would be pulled back into the Earth, obliterating the planet and all that inhabit it. Justine's near clairvoyance speaks to a broader issue associated with grief and the concept of acceptance. As much as grief conjures fears of the unknown, it is very much a known animal. I'm not the first guy to make a video like this. I'm sure I don't have to tell you, people make entire careers out of this. A good chunk of human history has been the pursuit of comfort in grief, love in pain, art in disaster. While Justine has come to acknowledge the inevitability of Earth's demise, she's yet to fully accept it. While she comes to terms with this inevitability, she journeys through a plethora of emotions, all unique to her. Grief is a healthy adaptive process that is absolutely necessary to your well-being moving forward after tragedy. The hard-nosed response to such troubling emotions can often be to shut down, to refuse to feel what it is you're feeling. By now, it's almost common knowledge that this is detrimental. We see through Claire's depiction of grief this exact detriment, as her mental state deteriorates as Melancholia draws ever nearer. Meanwhile, Justine has not limited her range on what she will feel as she waits for it all to end. She allows herself to feel all of it, completely. This is the very outset of acceptance. While those emotions are difficult, we can see in the end the difference between approaches. As Claire and Justine take their last few breaths as Melancholia makes contact, Claire is subject to an onslaught of emotion. Emotions she pushed down and refused to process until she absolutely had to. Meanwhile, Justine sits calm, stoic even, having fully accepted the end. It's a brilliant illustration of the levity created when we use our pain as building blocks towards healing. The truth is, grief by its very nature is transformative, and change can be scary. Whether it's the passing of a loved one, your own eventual certain demise, or the destruction of every living thing, what remains after is a blind spot in our perception. How can we accept that we'll no longer exist, either as our whole self in the case of a passing loved one, or even physically, as would be the case with an event like Melancholia? It's a liminal space, a dark room you've never been in. While you've seen rooms and are familiar with the concept of rooms, this one is different. This one isn't yours. It hasn't been, and you don't want it to be. But inevitably, it will. Grief and suffering are not optional. They are inextricably linked to humanity, and likely will be for the existence of our species. So while venturing into that black, cold unknown may be scary, it's a trip that eventually we'll all have to take. Thanks for watching this video. As I've said before, these deep dive kind of serious video essays are my absolute favorite thing to do on this channel. So hopefully y'all keep watching them so I can keep doing them. The first two have done really well, so yay, that's awesome. Please like and subscribe, follow me on all the social medias. I have all of it in some capacity. Leave a comment, maybe share this, I don't know. As of filming this, the next thing I have planned is another Forgotten 80s gem. Anyways, thanks, and until next time, stay safe.